everybody, I'm going to introduce you to Joe Magid. Joe, we position as a sponsor because he's outside of the world of marketing, which is, our world of members. But he runs Gryphon Solutions. And it turns out he's also a Cornell alum, which is, you and I we both went to the same school. So I like you already. I'm going to turn the screen over to you. The way that this works is you have about 10 minutes to do your presentation, and I'm just going to give you a little note, like I'll just say, hey, you got 2 minutes left, and then there's 5 minutes plus for a Q&A. And hopefully, we will all have the opportunity to learn a little bit more today than we knew before. So let me get you into screen sharing. I think to do that, I have to make you the host, correct?
I believe that's correct.
All right. Do I want to change the host? Yes, you're now the host.
Okay.
So.
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes. Yep.
Great. So that's the title screen. So you can read that. I put the little trust referral network in there so everybody could acknowledge that that's where we're at. So what I do, what my company does, is to work with companies to eliminate IT management issues and really to help improve satisfaction and trust in the technology capabilities in the team in particular. And when there isn't trust and when there isn't satisfaction, there's usually issues that are impacting on success of the business. So that's sort of how things look. And what we see is that there are a number of potential problems. So these are sort of the symptoms, if you will, of IT management problems. These aren't the IT management problems themselves, but these are the symptoms that indicate that they exist. And I harp on these because for referral partners, as well as for prospective clients, this is how we know that there's something going on there and an opportunity to address them, and for me to get in and work with a company to either reduce, if not eliminate.
Joe, I'm going to stop you for a second because not everybody can see your screen. Is Audrey, you the only one who can't see Joe's screen?
I can't see it, but if I'm the only one, then it's got to be something on my end.
Julie and Mark, can you see it?
I'm having trouble seeing anything because my computer is frozen at the moment.
Oops.
Mark, how about you?
I can see it, but it's like a split screen.
Huh.
Oh, you guys are seeing.
All I see is Joe talking.
Okay.
Do you have two screens, Joe?
Let me stop the share and try it again.
How many screens are you working off, Joe?
I have two, but I was
Okay.
I tried, thought I was sharing the presentation, the
Well, make
PowerPoint
sure you
slide.
click on the. I have 3 screens, so I do this. Like you need to click on the screen, and then on the presentation. Does that make sense? The
So
screen which the presentation is on.
So I have this screen 1 is, so I'll do screen 2 and see how that works. If that works better. Is that better?
Much.
Okay.
Now I see it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for letting me know. So let me just go back to the prior one so you can see that real quick. So that's the goal. And these are the symptoms. So deliverables being late, over budget. I get multiple reports from different parts of the company. They have the same column header, but the numbers are different. What's going on? That's a data governance issue typically. There actually are different things. Those numbers are right, the title's wrong, but they haven't gotten themselves together to define what's what and make sure they have different column headers to actually describe different things. Thrashing of resources. Somebody calls up and goes, oh, we have a big problem. I need you to fix it right away. And they jump and go do it. When the answer may be, well, it's a problem, but it's not as big as it looks. And there's other things that are more important that we should keep doing. And when we have a good point to break and then move over to work on your issue, we can do that. So lack of prioritization is really the key here. Turning over staff. It takes a long time to get somebody up to speed. Well, we don't have good documentation. We don't have our data documented. There's a whole lot of process and data components to that. that can be addressed. Again, prioritization. There's multiple, quote, top priority projects. So typical scenario here is each member of senior management sees IT as a service bureau for their department or their division, not for the company as a whole. So each member of senior management sending a list over to IT, a top 5 or 10 for them. And now IT's got multiple top 5 lists, and they're supposed to figure out what number 1 is, and they can't do that. They don't have a means to do that. Senior management has to do that. Backlog of requests, similar thing. Business areas eventually go, well, you know, IT is not going to be able to get this done. I'm just going to do it myself. Have one of my people do it. That becomes costly. I can't find the data I'm looking for. I don't know what's where. I'm working with a client now. That's one of their many issues. And again, the second to last one, you know, we just don't bother to ask IT because we know they can't get it to us. They're swamped, and we have to expend our own resources. And oh, by the way, if we're doing that, that's IT dollars. It's not in the IT budget. It's just a hidden IT spend. And typically that can be anywhere from 15 to 20 or 25% of the on budget IT spend is another IT spend that's going on that they're just plain missing. So there's a real budget component to that and an opportunity to either invest more in IT and make it on budget and get it done effectively. And so your folks are doing what they should be doing, IT is doing what they should be doing. And then again, validity of information, that ties back to the second one. I get this data and I don't trust it. I got to send people off to validate it, et cetera. A lot of waste going on there. So who's my target market? I'm dealing with middle market companies. They have to be at least 50 to 75 million because that 20% additional spend that's hidden is a possible savings. They've got to be big enough to make that worth the time and effort for me to come in and work with them. Sweet spot's probably 100 to 250 million, maybe 300 million. That's where companies have grown and they haven't really paid attention to their processes, procedures, and their IT infrastructure the way they should have. They're just too busy growing. And now it's time for them to step back and fix those issues. And it's exactly what I'm doing with the company right now. They're a $200 million company, and they have a lot of work to do to fix their IT infrastructure if they're going to grow further the way they want to. Across different verticals, I worked with all of these. I'm working with construction right now. There's really not any vertical limit in terms of who I can work with. I will say there's probably some areas that are less likely to deal with someone who doesn't have extensive experience in their industry. Sort of, you know, B2C, consumer goods kinds of things. Retail might be less inclined, and that's fine. There's plenty of companies in these verticals and similar for me to work with. And again, as I was saying before, a corollary to what I was saying, IT is not the business. IT is a service bureau for the company. So that's generally a characteristic that will be in all of the companies I work with. If it's a technology company and IT is what they do, they better have their act together with IT. Otherwise, they're really going to be out of business, and I still can't help them. Frequently, also characteristic is IT leader, whether it's a CIO or IT director or manager, doesn't report to the CEO. They're buried somewhere in the organization. They're not sitting at the table when decisions are being made. And therefore, this prioritization issue is really quite large. And they have one or more of those common IT management problems. So my prospect target is either that IT responsible person who is getting hammered and they know that they are not performing the way they need to, and they need help. And they can bring me in, basically go to their boss and go, hey, you're right. We're not getting the job done here. I'm not getting the job done. I really want to fix it, but I'm going to need your help. And they'll go, well, what help do you need? Well, I'll handle all my budget, or maybe I need some help with the budget, but I want to bring somebody in. I just need mostly your time to work with this person I'm going to bring in to help fix the problem. And I have done it in that fashion before, and it works quite well. Alternatively, brought in by the CEO or the COO or whoever. And typically that scenario is either that senior executive is relatively new, recognizes IT as an issue, and wants to bring somebody in to help address that issue, or they've just hit a barrier and senior management has recognized that they need some help. Referral partners. Anybody who's a trusted advisor to the C-suite is a great referral partner. So that might be a commercial insurance broker, a benefits broker, a banker, accountants, attorneys. I haven't gotten a lot of referrals from those folks. Sometimes accountants have partners already that they work with, and they give them this kind of work. And attorneys, for whatever reason, they just haven't generally been good referral partners so far. It doesn't mean they can't be if they're in, working with the C-suite. Certainly, it's an opportunity. So this is my special sauce. This is my magic elixir. It's my process and how I go about ensuring that this is going to work. And it's a really good process. I'm doing it right now. I have just finished the current state, future state with my current client. I'm getting ready to build their corporate IT strategy. I put that in my proprietary software and really have a great process for helping them determine, really to build a structure for establishing priorities. And then I do the same thing for the IT function itself. And sometimes I help them get started actually implementing the plan. Sometimes I don't. Depends on the client's desire on that score. But we do basically an assessment component, determine the ground truth, put together a baseline report, do a facilitated session, and I have a great partner that I'm working with. We did 2 4-hour sessions with 35 people in each session last week, and breakouts and report backs, and it really went extremely well. And when I talked to the senior management team after the second session, the statement of the COO was, "This really has exceeded our expectations." So that's something you really like to hear.
So we're coming up on the end of your 10-minute segment, but if there's other ones.
Yeah, I'll take one more minute.
Mhm.
So this is just some views of this software that I put the information into, and it really gives me a great structure to work with, to define what's going on and to establish, again, the priorities. So there's this importance component that we set up for CSFs and SWATs. We do impact assessment, which is this part, looking at, if I get these goals done, what's the impact on the CSF? There's different statements to pick that. Having put numbers next to the CSFs as a facilitated process with senior management, we then build the importance values, build scores for the goals and objectives, and then for the projects, and you end up with a clear prioritization scheme and understand what's important. There's really not any issue with that. Just a little bit about me real quick. Went to Cornell, got my master's at Penn. I've had multiple different parts of my career, and all of those has come together to help me figure out, how to do this stuff really well. I got 2 boys who you can see a little bit through their lives, who are now grown up. So that middle top picture was them in Israel a couple years back. A little bit of my early career dealing with adversity, so to speak. Our dog, who unfortunately we lost this past summer, she was 17 and a half. And my wife, as commissioner of our township, Lower Merion, greeting the Pope when he was in town a few years back, and us at the festival they had down in front of the Art Museum in Philadelphia. So a lot of fun stuff going on from that score. So this is what we do. This is our, basically, we help companies build IT departments get the job done. We've got this methodology that really works exceptionally well. And I get in based on typically on the trust that I'm going to get the job done. And that's also based on their trust in my referral network and my referral sources. So that's how I get business pretty much. We do some seminars on occasion or workshops and can get some business out of that, but mostly it's the referral network.
Thank you. That was really helpful. I have some general questions, and I'm sure that others do. So this is the equivalent of a 5-minute Q&A, but if it runs over a little bit, that's okay. So do you position yourself as an outsourced short-term or long-term solution for a company that you're going to come in and help kind of straighten out, if you will?
Yeah, it's a limited engagement. We typically run, let me see if I can get to the right slide. So you look at the timeline here, it's a 3.5 to 4, maybe 5 month process to go through this methodology. And that's the key part of the engagement. And then again, sometimes I will stay around for another several months to help get implementation started. But I'm not a CIO. I don't do fractional CIO. If you want to call me an interim CIO for a brief period to help establish the company's IT strategy, fine. That is sort of how my current client was thinking about it. But this is definitely not a long, multi-year kind of a scenario. I'm generally not working with a client for longer than a year at the outside.
And then my other question is when you had identified the verticals that are a sweet spot for you, I understand the size of the company that's a sweet spot for you, which makes sense because below a certain size, their issues aren't great. Above a certain size, they already have that in-house engagement. So the middle market makes sense. But a lot of the people who are part of the Trusted Referral Network are very focused on marketing technology, agency work, advertising work. And I see that you had publishing in there as well as healthcare, which are things that are also covered within this group. But and it may be that Julie and Mark and Audrey have questions that are somewhat related. But how easy or difficult is it for you and your team to move towards or participate in a company that is very marketing focused? Maybe you have to work with a CMO, maybe you have to work with an agency. I'm just curious.
So yeah, my current client almost all their IT is outsourced to a managed services provider. So in a similar fashion, if their marketing department's outsourced and there are issues that are manifesting for the marketing folks because IT doesn't have their act together, that's part of the baseline. So, it's really not a problem for me in terms of who I'm working with to understand what the issues are and who I bring together to figure out what the right, process, what the right really solutions are. So, typical kinds of scenarios are they have a mishmash of systems that were bought at different times by different people in the organization that don't talk to each other. So they have a lot of manual processes and a lot of inefficiencies. And if you're in marketing and you're trying to figure out what, how you're doing in turning over prospects into clients, and their sales team doesn't have good, they have a good CRM. The CRM's not integrated with their implementation software. So you keep losing stuff. You're trying to keep track of things, you can't do it. That's going to certainly hobble, I would think, your efforts to demonstrate that what you're doing is working.
Got it. Thank you.
Right, and that's an IT problem.
Yep. I'm going to turn it over to anybody else who might have questions. You're on mute, so if you want to unmute.
So I think Elise kind of answered the questions that I had for you, Joe. It was a really good presentation. And I really like the way you, held up the situations that make your, an ideal client for you. I would imagine that you're kind of industry agnostic.
Yeah, pretty much. So again, the first client I worked with was public sector, Department of Public Welfare in Harrisburg. The second one I worked with, I think, was a publishing company, and what they published was information about gas prices and oil prices. So they, all the companies that have gas stations, they can't tell each other what their prices are, but they told these guys what their prices were, and then they published it back to everybody. So that's how they got around the antitrust issues. And they were a mess. They had all these different departments. They're all using different stuff. They're all doing it in different ways. And again, they had, in this case, it was sort of a conglomerate. They pulled together and bought little different businesses, and now they had to rationalize their infrastructure. So, the patterns persist. They're not particularly different, but, the personalities are different. The change management issues are different. The actual technology is going to be different. Who's going to help them fix the issues afterwards are different. And that's also, I have a pretty extensive referral network for people who are on the technical side to bring in and help. And it may be that there's marketing technology that's an issue as well. And folks here potentially, depending on the client and what their scenario is, could help them with some of that stuff as well.
Great. What is your typical referral look like? In other words, let's say I hear of somebody who might need your services. Is it best to just do an email intro?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I mean, either let me know and I'll reach out, let the prospect know and let them reach out to me, send an email to both of us, whatever, is perfectly fine. Depending on your relationship with your client, you may want to broker a meeting and say, hey, let's get together on the phone for 15 minutes. I can set up, what I understand, you can add to it and then see, what Joe has to say. Referral's a referral. If someone who's trusted by the company, says, hey, I think Joe can help you, then at least they're going to listen to me. I get to explain why I think I can help them, how I would do that. And usually I ask questions first, what's going on? Why are you bothering to talk to me? Do you really have, is it merit my time and your time to do this? Can't you just handle it yourself? And of course the answer is typically no. But you have to ask those questions and verify and validate that this is something that's worth doing, because it's tough. This is difficult work, and a big part of my whole process is, could I walk in and after a few days probably give them some really good recommendations? Sure. Am I going to do that? No. Right? Because it's a change management process, right? You have to bring them through the process. That's why I have the methodology.
Do you find that the person who brings you in is pretty educated about what you do?
Not particularly. It's really, it's the common problems, right? So you're dealing with, you're working with your client, and they go, yeah, we're going to meet, I can't meet with you tomorrow. I got a big blow up. IT screwed up again. You're going, really? Does it happen very often? What do you do when that happens, right? And in essence, the answer to that is, how much is it costing you? And if that cost is, if it's happening frequently enough and the cost is sufficient, well, why are you keep throwing this money out the window, right? Or you didn't close this deal. It could have been worth 10 million bucks, right? Because your IT screwed up. That's silly, right? It's going to cost you a fraction of that to fix it. So yeah, so it's the indicators, it's the symptoms. And Mark, you're shaking your head. You've never seen this happen before, right?
Mark, you're on mute.
No, never.
Never, right?
Never,
how many times?
Never
Yeah,
seen
how
that happen
often?
before.
Right. So
I see it quite a bit.
yeah, exactly.
So I mean, you're a good referral for me. Because I'm in a lot of companies that have screwed up IT departments in similar sizes to what you're looking at.
Great.
That's great. We made a connection.
Yeah. And I am not surprised, right? It's really not a question of are they out there and do they need help? It's a question of, will they be willing to recognize that they need to take the time, they need to step back, they need to take a breath and do this hard work, right? And it is very hard work. And it's, it doesn't feel good. It's like, yeah, you're a lot of dirty laundry is going to get aired. Yeah, that was my decision. I screwed up. It's like, well, no, how could you have possibly known better? It's not what you do for a living, right? And on the IT side, people are typically, as companies are growing, they're good at the technical stuff they get hired for. They're not good at the business side. They don't talk well with the business. It's just not their skill set. Until you get bigger and you're paying serious money for your CIO, you're just not going to have somebody typically who can walk on both sides of that line. And so you got disconnects, and they're going to grow over time. And it's sort of like the airplane thing, right? You take off, and if you're exactly on your heading, you get to the right place. If you're off by half a degree and you're going for any distance, you're going to keep veering further and further off of the target. And that's what you see happening with these smaller companies as they grow.
So we have time for one more question. Ariel, did you have any questions? You're on mute.
Yeah. No, sorry. This is my first meeting with you guys. So great to join you. Had a little trouble signing in, but excellent presentation. But I don't have any questions at the time, but it's great to be with you guys today.
Thank you so much. So I think what we're going to do now, and I know that we have a small group, is typically we would go around the room to just take a 2-minute Everybody can kind of introduce themselves for 2 minutes. Joe, if you wish to stay, you certainly can. If you wish to exit, you can. I mean, it's a small enough group.
I'll stay for a bit.
Okay, so Ariel, let's start with you. Kindly take 2 minutes for you to share, who you are and what you're doing.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I'll try to do it in less than 2 minutes. Because I'm used to doing that in some other groups where they give you 30 seconds. So my name's Ariel Picus. I'm an intellectual property law attorney. I work for the firm of Osterlang Faber. We focus on almost exclusively on patents, trademarks, and copyrights. I'm a litigator in the area of IP, and I especially work with clients on their branding and efforts to protect creative works, from picking a trademark to registering it, to dealing with any issues of enforcement, or if they hear from another company that alleges they've infringed those rights. I work with technical people with engineering backgrounds who are patent attorneys, and they handle matters involving whether an invention is patentable and figuring out a strategy to pursue patent rights with the U.S. Patent Office and abroad. My clients include small startups to individuals who might have, followings online or so on, who are looking to build a brand, protect jewelry designs, to protect a podcast, all natures of creative and branded work. And I work with a lot of people who are doing it for the first time, seeking a trademark for the first time, seeking a patent for the first time. And I spend, I'd say, at least an hour a day talking to someone who's thinking about going through this process and wants to understand what is the time and cost involved with doing it. So very accessible and open to talking to entrepreneurs and creative people in all efforts related to their IP.
Wow, you're perfect timing. You're good at this. Thank you so much. Julie, could you take a few minutes?
Sure. I'm Julie Livingston, and my company is Want Leverage Communications, a full service public relations agency, and we help under the radar businesses really across industry sectors that have been, in business for a while. I have a client now that's been around for 50 years, a family-owned business, but they've been kind of under the radar, maybe not getting the kind of notice and recognition in their industry as they deserve. If it's a family business, perhaps they're looking to sell their business in a couple of years, like my current client. And to do so, they really want to raise their visibility, their industry visibility, and their credibility, their brand credibility, so that they can eventually attract buyers. Interesting, Ariel, that you mentioned jewelry. I spent about 15 years of my career in the fine jewelry industry and the fashion jewelry industry for some major companies. But I've worked in youth entertainment. I was at Scholastic. I was at the Toy Association. I've worked in many, many industry sectors. My client now is an elevator company, the family-owned business. So I help companies to get featured in the news media that matters to them, whether it's top tier media like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fortune, or whether it's an industry vertical or industry trade publication, podcasts, websites, et cetera, so that they can be seen as industry authorities. And I also do content creation and placement, book speaking opportunities, and broker strategic partnerships that really extend a brand's reach. And so I'd love to talk to anybody who would be a connection to under the radar businesses. I also have a free tip sheet that I will share the link to in the chat. It's 7 tips to establish industry authority. And I'm also available for a free 30-minute PR discovery call whenever.
Thank you so much. Mark, you're up.
It's me. Hi, I'm Mark Thibault. I'm with Growth Strategy Advisors. I was only laughing a little bit with Joe because I've worked in technology probably since the mid-90s. A little different than what you do, Joe. But one of the things I was when I was at Lowe's for a period of time, for 3 years, I was one of the business leads on the omni-channel program. We were trying to put together 200 different programs in the technology stack, and for contact center, close.com, operations, and it was a disaster. But so, but part of it was, that we kept changing methodologies. We were doing, waterfall, we were doing agile, and it was a mess. But anyway, long story short, I learned a lot from that. Currently, I work with a lot of technology companies, mainly that are owned either individually or with private equity groups or investment banks. And typically what they're looking to do is grow. So I'm in this market and I want to go to this. So I help them evaluate, you're here, this is where you're positioned, this is what the market looks like, and this is the company you should be going after. The interesting thing, of course, is that most of the private equity groups have often already made up their mind on what they want to buy. And so sometimes they buy it and sometimes they don't. And what I say sometimes matters and sometimes it doesn't. But the whole key is really that's really what I do. I basically do market trending, I do positioning, and I do competitive analysis. So in technology.
So thank you so much. As you know, I'm subbing in for Michael today, who has his spiel down pat. I work in sports technology. I work for sports properties as well as startup technologies, and I basically get startup technologies that address the pain points that operate in sports. And today, more than ever, sports understand now, they didn't 6 months ago when I was just banging on them to try to get them to understand that digital transformation is their future. But it didn't matter. Now it matters. So I work mostly with startups in the sports tech space. I help them position themselves properly, get them through accelerators, help lead them into sales, and then ultimately into fundraising. So it's a very dynamic space. It's a minefield right now, because there are certain technologies that are only single point solutions and they're not going to be around for very long because the next best thing is going to come along. So juggling which ones have runway versus which ones don't. But all of that has to do, there's a marketing focus, there's a PR focus, there's a fundraising focus, there's a positioning focus, not unlike what each and every one of you deal with in one way, shape, or form. So it's always incredibly valuable when I get to hear what everybody is doing, because everything is related to everything else. We have a little bit of time. I recognize that there's a smaller number of people on this call than typical. If you want to stay on and have a further conversation up until 12, I'm happy to accommodate that. If everybody feels that they've done enough today and you're done, you let me know that too. I'm happy to do whatever you guys believe is most important.